The outcome of this election has nothing to do with anything Barbara Kennelly did wrong. The outcome of this election is a testament to what we've done right over the last 4 years.
That was 20 years ago. Big night for Republicans when a Republican governor was reelected in a landslide. Far different from this past Tuesday night. And here to talk about how Republicans crawl out of the wreckage of this year's election, we are joined by three Republicans, State Senators Art Linares and George Logan, and the Mayor of New Britain, Erin Stewart, who was also a candidate for governor and lieutenant governor this past year. And Mayor, I'll begin with you.
Sure.
What do you make of the results? Are you surprised by them?
You know, yes and no. Did I think we'd do a little bit better? Most certainly. But I think that the writing was on the wall that it was going to be a difficult year and that we were going to have to work 10 times harder to earn the votes of all of the newly registered voters that were coming out with wanting to vote against President Trump.
We should point out, Senator Logan, you are currently in a recount right now. Your race was so tight.
That's right.
On election night, you were behind, now you're ahead. What do you make of these numbers overall for the whole state?
Yeah, well, we certainly have a divided community in my 17th district, and I think that's indicative of what we have here in the state of Connecticut as well. You know, I try to tell folks during the campaign that there's a difference in terms of what's going on in Washington and what's going on here in Connecticut. You know, the current president or any past presidents are not the ones that got the state of Connecticut in this financial crisis that we're in now, and it's up to us to try to fix it. But there was a lot of emotions going on. I think a lot of folks were, you know, placed their votes based on what they were seeing on television and what they're seeing going on a national level, and I think that had an effect on our statewide races.
And Senator Linares, you see this through a different viewpoint because you are not running for re-election. You were not on the ballot this November. Why was it so bad for Republicans in a year that many say they should have won and, in fact, increased their numbers in the General Assembly because Governor Malloy is so unpopular?
So I've been saying for quite some time now that Republicans have to do a better job of recruiting not good candidates, but great candidates, diverse candidates. We need to run more women. We need to run more African-American candidates, Hispanic, Asian-American candidates that represent and can connect with the communities that we need to do better in. So that's one. I think Democrats did a fantastic job of organizing a grassroots effort in our neighborhoods. They beat us in our neighborhoods. And we need to look take inventory of the Republican Party and focus on the cities and driving up the numbers in our cities and communicating our message.
Did Bob Stefanowski do anything wrong, Mayor Stewart? Mayor Stewart? Or was it just that this was a year that maybe the anti-Trump fervor was out there?
Oh, listen, the anti-Trump fervor was out there, that's for sure. Listen, we see it, you know, Senator Logan sees it. I know we hear it all the time in our respective communities. I hear it in New Britain all the time. And I'm always criticized when I come out and say something that maybe disagreeing with the president. We have to look at the bigger picture here. And the bigger picture is how does the Republican Party survive in the state of Connecticut? And we've got to start going towards more moderate candidates that have those fiscally conservative values, but maybe a little bit more socially moderate or socially liberal. I was never shy from saying that about myself. If we don't become the big tent party and start allowing others in, we're going to really struggle to survive. I'm a big proponent of open primaries. And I think the Republican Party needs to do a lot of self-reflection in the next couple of months and weeks and really look at that as an option.
Senator Logan, where did Bob Stefanowski go wrong?
Yeah, I think part of our issue is we do have to, I think, as the state Republicans, Connecticut Republicans, have to look at the primary system. We had our primary in August, so it was pretty late in the game. Prior to August, most folks in the state of Connecticut had no idea who Bob Stefanowski was. So he had very little time to really get going. He relied more on advertising, which were digital ads, television, radio, but he had just about zero ground game. So we as a state party are going to look at that to see if it makes sense. And our convention in June, we have to look at that entire system and we have to consider doing things a little different so we don't find ourselves in the same situation in the future.
Bob also spent a lot of time fundraising. He didn't go for a CEP. Instead, he decided to go self-funding, but it showed at the end that he was spending a lot of time having fundraiser after fundraiser after fundraiser when he would have had all that time to be campaigning or going to Hartford or New Britain or New Haven or Waterbury.
Do you think a David Stemmerman or a Mark Boughton or Tim Herbst might have done better?
Well, I think they would have done great. I think that the person sitting to my left would have done fantastic on the top of the ticket. I really think that in order for Republicans to be successful, we have to run a different kind of candidate. We have to show people something different. And we have to answer some basic questions. How can we help people afford health care? How can we help people afford to put gas in their car? And how are we going to provide a great education for their kids?
You know, someone said to me that Republicans are kind of wimpy about really wanting change. For example, you know, no one of any consequence runs against the congressional members. Like you could run against, you know, Rosa DeLauro, or you could have run against, you know, in the 5th, but nobody wants to take on these, you know, these Democrats who are many cases they say are entrenched. Why not?
You got to build that ground game, right? And you got to build your bench. And I think we have to do a better job at building our bench and recruiting candidates from every single office. We should have had candidates, you know, really great, empowering candidates in all of those congressional districts. And that's something that the party, we need to look at, especially for next time in 2020. It's going to be all eyes on the congressional races.
Would any of you be interested in running for Congress? Taking on those so-called giants?
Crickets.
Not all at once. Not all at once.
I'm out of the game, man.
You're going to hear crickets from me on that one.
Yeah.
I'm an executive, not a legislative branch type person.
My entire focus right now is regaining my seat as a state senator and working on fixing Connecticut. I spent about 20 years in my community working at the more local level. Now I'm trying to help my community at the state level, and I think that's incredibly important. We need good candidates at all levels. We need to do a better job, I think, as Connecticut Republicans at getting our message out. You know, the last session, a couple sessions, we were able to institute a spending cap, right? What did that do? That make sure that the state doesn't spend more, try to help the state make sure it doesn't spend more money than it has. Bonding cap, make sure we don't borrow more money than we have. A volatility cap, if we get more income than we project, that we put it in a surplus and not spend wildly. Those are the things that I'm worried about that may get rolled back with the current.
Is J.R. Romano doing a good job? Should he stay in charge of the GOP?
I think JR is handcuffed, and JR is handcuffed by the people that are the other party leaders that he has to answer to. And until the leadership, the entire makeup and leadership of the party changes, like the State Central Committee, which I'm a member of, full disclosure, he has to answer to those people who are his bosses as well. So he's got a delicate balance. JR is very capable, and I think he's a good friend, you know, and I don't think it's all his fault.
What about opening up the primaries to independents so you get more people in there involved in the Republican process?
I think that's a great idea. I think it would help our party tremendously, and I think that it would also elevate our message across the state and get more people involved in our party.
You got to look at the numbers, and the numbers speak for themselves. Republicans are outnumbered 2-1, and then you look at the independents or unaffiliated, those are even more than the Democrats. If we don't do something to open up our doors to unaffiliated and independent voters, we're going to struggle to survive here.
And how does that get changed? Is that something you can easily change in the party, or, you know, working with the leaders?
Got to go through State Central.
Yeah, we have to go through the leadership of the state. But I'm not so sure that I'm in favor of open primaries per se. I'm certainly willing to look at it and weigh in the pros and cons of it. But just off the top, I'm not prepared now to say that I'm in favor of open primaries.
You know, if you look at some of the numbers, had Bob Stefanowski done as well as Tom Foley did in the cities, he might have won. He was down almost 5 percentage points in pretty much every city. Yeah. What does the next Republican have to do to make some inroads into the urban communities?
Not be afraid to campaign there because you think that you're not going to do well. And I think oftentimes, I preach this all the time, that oftentimes the Republican Party stays away from the cities because they don't think that they'll be able to make inroads, or they kind of write it off and say, well, we'll count on the suburbs because that's where we'll do better. And you can't write us off. Listen, every election that I go into, I know I'm outnumbered 6-1, but that doesn't mean that I just give up or I don't go for it. But you get out there and you have to talk to people and make personal connections, and you'd be surprised that a lot of individuals that live in cities have more in common with the Republican Party than what you think.
Senator Logan.
No, absolutely. It is incredibly important that the Connecticut Republicans certainly focus more on our cities, and anyone running for governor as a Republican absolutely has to spend the time and focus on the cities and actually be there and hear what the issues are and make sure that his or her a strategy or platform certainly is something that the folks in the cities and the urban areas understand and can get behind.
I'll let you have the last 20 seconds.
Absolutely. So when the Democrats lost the presidency in 2016, instead of wallowing, they got activated, they got motivated and organized in our communities. And Republicans need to start today getting involved in the cities and getting our message out there. So absolutely.
We thank you all for being here, and best of luck on your baby who's coming, your new marriage, and your recount.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
We thank you all for being. There's something for everybody. We thank you all for being with us today.
Our pleasure.
Thanks for watching Face the State on this Sunday. Stay tuned for some great football right here on Channel 3. Yeah, I appreciate you guys coming on. Thank you very much. You guys were all wonderful. And